It seems that no matter where you look, over the past decade, large organizations around the globe have fallen prey to data breaches at one time or another. This article shows that in 2017, Deloitte, one of the biggest accountancy firms in the world, fell prey to a cybersecurity attack. It was found that hackers breached Deloitte's global email server via an administrator account that had unrestricted access to the entire network. The account did not have MFA enabled, and we learned early on when we created our root user why MFA was so important for privileged accounts such as this one that had access to the entire network. The purpose is not to single out Deloitte, but to show how susceptible an organization can become when poor IAM processes are in place, and more importantly, when they are not continually audited and corrected. Andrew Martins, a staff writer for Business News Daily, reported that poor access management leads to the majority of IT hacks. But what exactly is access management? Great question. Identity and access management is a web service that helps you securely control access to AWS resources. IAM identities determine who can access resources in your AWS account. Users and roles are the primary identities that we will explore in the next slide. But it's also good to know that principal is another term that's often used to refer to an IAM identity. Access management or authorization inside of IAM is what stipulates the resources that can be accessed, and it's controlled by policies which grant permissions. An IAM user is an identity with an associated credential and permissions attached to it. This could be an actual person who is a user, or it could be an application that is acting like a user. We will learn how to create users in our hands-on lab, and you'll become very familiar with the different characteristics that are present. A collection of IAM users is what's referred to as an IAM group. You can use IAM groups to specify permissions for multiple users so that any permissions applied to the group are applied to the individual users in that group as well. In our hands-on lab, you will see how managing groups is quite easy. You set up the permissions for the group, and those permissions are automatically applied to all users in that group. If you add another user to the group, the new user will automatically inherit all the policies and permissions that you've already assigned to the group. In an organization, this lowers the administrative burden. IAM roles fulfill a unique and powerful niche in the identity and access management landscape. Instead of assigning permissions to an entity directly, roles allow an entity to be granted permissions temporarily on an as-needed basis to perform tasks. For example, you might allow a mobile app to use AWS resources, but you do not want it to save the key or the password. Or you may want to give access to resources to a user who already has an identity defined outside of AWS, such as a user who has Google or Facebook authentication. If you want to provide someone with a service or let someone access resources in your account, you can use roles for that purpose too. This may be needed in circumstances such as when a consultant or an auditor needs temporary access to be granted. They're not permanent users. They just need access to the environment to perform the task. An IAM policy sets permissions and controls access to AWS resources. Permissions enable you to perform actions on AWS resources. When a new user or a group is created, again, it has no permissions and a policy must be attached to allow actions to be taken on AWS resources. You can assign permissions to all AWS identities, users, groups, and roles, and we will see the 2 ways to assign permissions in the upcoming hands-on lab. A few of the key IAM features are seen here. We've already discussed the importance of authentication and authorization, and we will also see how fine-grained permissions can be provided to get very granular when providing permissions to ensure that the least privilege concept is enforced. Although we will be using a single account during this bootcamp, in the real world, many organizations have multiple AWS accounts that they either utilize or that they are responsible for managing. And IAM is critical to ensuring that there can be shared access across these accounts. You have probably seen a page like this somewhere. You may be familiar with a screen such as this, as you often see online for retailers, blogs, or social media sites. Clicking on a button such as this is a form of using federation in the background. To make it simple, instead of creating hundreds or thousands of users within AWS, there may be times where you trust a partner site or customer. You can create a tie between the directories and establish that trust so that they can log in with their already created accounts inside of that respective provider, such as Okta or Active Directory. So that was a high-level overview of IAM and its primary components. To get a more detailed look and to actually see it in action inside of AWS's console, then go ahead and check this video out right here. But again, I just want to thank each and every one of you today for rocking in here with me. So until next time, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and peace.